In this video, I want to walk through our grading policies for Chemistry 121 this winter. So in general, the grading structure borrows from styles like standards-based grading, specifications grading, or labor-based grading. The kind of impact of it is that all of our assignments are going to be graded as either just incomplete, complete, or proficient. So there's just 3 levels instead of a number of points that you would get a percentage of for each assignment. Something that's proficient is basically A- level work. It's like, yep, you got this. There might be small errors, or it might be perfect. And you'll see a grade marked as P in Canvas. And it'll correspond to a 1 out of 1, since Canvas requires everything to have a point value associated with it. If something is complete, it means that you have tried the work. You've done probably a pretty good job. It's just not at that A- level. So I really think about it as somewhere between kind of anything from a failing grade of like a 30% or 50% up to that 85% that would indicate an A- level of work. And so this will be marked in Canvas as a C for complete, and it'll have a point value associated of 0.5. Incomplete means that it's just not done yet. And so it'll receive a 0 or an I in Canvas. And it just means that not all the problems were attempted, or they're just like large missing pieces of it, or it wasn't submitted by a specific time. So in general, students are going to be able to revise their work that they're turning in with my feedback. The exception to this will be exams. Those we'll just do once. However, if you don't like how you performed on an exam, you'll be able to increase your grade in other ways. One of the requirements of me as an instructor with this type of grading is that I'm going to need to be super clear about what it means to get either a proficient or a complete on an assignment. So all of the assignments will have either like a list of requirements for those grades, or a rubric, which will just be like you'll complete all of these components. So that way it's really clear what you need to do. If you are ever confused, please reach out. It's not my intention to obfuscate the path to a proficient grade. So please let me know so I can clarify. I'm going to walk through our assignments really quick and then talk about grading overall. So if you want to just get to the grading grade calculation piece, you can skip towards the end of this video. So we have several types of assignments. The first one really make up this bulk amount. It's just like coming into class, participating in the first few weeks, and understanding what is going to be happening for our class policies. And so this will be about 20% of your grade. And it'll be like an introduction to your peers, telling me about you in a survey, signing on to our class honor code agreement after we make it, taking a self-assessment in math, things like this. So this is kind of like the logistics of keeping the class running. In mid-quarter, this will include a grade check-in with me, and at the end of the quarter, it'll also include course evaluations. And these are assignments that are easy to do. They won't take much time, but they kind of keep the class moving. We then have homework assignments, and these are going to be intended to take up about an hour maybe of your life. The idea is that after you watch the lectures and read the textbook, that you attempt some practice problems that are characteristic of the types of problem solving that we'll be doing with the concepts before you come into class. And so this assignment will have a component of it that's based on when you turn it in. And so if you can attempt all the problems, they don't necessarily all need to be correct, but just attempt all the problems before class starts, then you'll be able to earn a proficient in the class, or the proficient in the assignment, in the homework assignment. And then the expectation is that you'll get 80% of them correct, either by the time you turn them in for class or by the end of the quarter, so you can revise your work on it. We'll also have about a pace of 1 homework assignment each week. They're going to be due on Mondays. So the hope is we'll start our week and come together aware of the content that we're going to be covering that week and ready to dive into kind of the harder stuff so we could do that work together. and leave the introductory piece for the material to an online environment. Self-assessments are kind of like a new version of a quiz. They'll be short. They'll be like 10, maybe even 5 minutes at the beginning of each of our class periods, where you'll sit down, you'll be given a set of questions, and you'll try them. And this is a way for you to kind of see where your understanding of the material is, especially on topics that I think are the most important. And then when you're done, you'll get together in a small group and you'll correct them. And so the idea is that by the end of the activity, you will have all the correct answers. You'll have discussed it with peers and learned from each other and gotten support from me throughout the process. So earning a proficient is just participating in that process at the end of the day. Completing it means that you were either not in class and you did this on your own without that peer collaboration piece. Activities. These are going to be individual assignments that we do together in groups in class, and they'll make up a larger percentage of your grade than the self-assessments. And they're more similar to like homework. We'll do one per week, roughly, for a total of 8. And for these assignments, they'll be more challenging. So I kind of think of like our homework as being, we'll start with the easier to medium problems, and then the activity picks up where the homework leaves off, and we start working on bringing concepts together and applying them out to real world examples. So these assignments will be things like case studies or demonstrations and discussions or challenging problems. So you'll have the support of peers as you work through these, though you will turn in individual work online to when you submit for this assignment. And these will each come with a rubric as well to really define what that proficient means, because it might look different depending on the type of activity. Right, labs. So we have kind of 2 lab assignments. There's pre-labs, which are really practice-based and they're very time-dependent. To be safe in lab, we need everyone to show up prepared to lab. So a pre-lab assignment is trying to make sure you're prepared. So before you come into lab, you'll read the introduction, the procedure, and then complete some pre-lab questions. We'll then gather in small groups, similar to the self-assessments, and discuss and correct our pre-lab answers. So the hope is that when we actually start the experiment, everyone knows the correct answer and everyone has a strong understanding of why those answers are correct. And so this assignment should then be straightforward to get a proficient if you are there participating in class. A complete will be awarded if you show up to class and the pre-lab is not complete. You'll be asked then to work on it because you can't start the lab without it, but you won't be able to earn a proficient. Labs then are going to be completed also as incomplete, complete, or proficient assignments. There's 8 of them, and you are going to earn a grade that is based on participating and completing the lab with a lab partner in class, and then answering questions. You'll be able to revise your work if there's major errors, so that way you can earn a proficient with my feedback through kind of an iterative process. And lastly, we have exams and projects. So everything else that we've talked about so far really is going to make up the bulk of your grade. And then exams and projects, I think it was like kind of building up your grade to be higher. So they're kind of like taking from a 3.1 to maybe a 3.5 or a 4.0. And so I really think of these assignments actually as optional. If you need a 3.1 in this class, then you don't really need to take an exam or complete a project. The projects are also very optional. They're kind of like a way to build in extra points, so that way you can demonstrate your understanding of something if you are struggling to do that in a lab or in an exam. You can then do a project that would maybe show your understanding in a way that is easier to express. So we'll just have 2 exams, a midterm and a final. They're not cumulative at the end. And so the first one will be on the first 5 chapters, the second on the second 5 chapters that we cover. Coming into class, attempting the exam and earning 30 to 85% will get you a complete grade on it. And that'll increase your GPA by 0.25 points. You can also think about it as getting like a 2.5% increase on your grade as well, or like added percentage points. And then if you earn more than 85% on the problems, then you'll get a 0.45 GPA boost or a 5% bump up. And then our projects are going to be basically worth 3% of your grade for each one that you complete. Like you can add an extra 3% to your total, or 0.3 GPA points. And if they're completed and don't meet the rubric that we agreed on, it'll be 1.5% or 0.15 GPA points. And these are going to be things like maybe you actually just complete absolutely all the assignments without dropping anything, or you create a study guide for each, a one-page study guide for each chapter, or an infographic that talks about how the partial pressure of oxygen in blood affects about a person's health, and you're really trying to apply gas laws into a medical setting. There's lots of options. We'll have a page that you can look at that goes into these in detail, but a lot of times it's easiest to just start talking to me about your ideas, and we can develop a rubric that meets your needs. All right, so here's kind of how final grades are going to be calculated, and I think of it in two different ways. My goal for this quarter is to create a system that does standards-based grading, but that allows Canvas to calculate the grade. Canvas calculations for grades are going to be pretty meaningless the first month of the quarter, at least for all classes. So I'm just going to leave them off for a bit and then turn them on. But if you ever have a question about like where you stand in the class, you can always email me. So our core assignments are introductory assignments, homework, self-assessments, activities, pre-labs, and labs. These make up 86% of your grade, and if you complete all of these at a proficient level, getting to drop 1 in each category, you can earn a 3.1 in the class. Just done. And then you don't have to take the exams. You just like walk away. If you want to earn a grade that's higher than that, then you're going to need to take the exams or complete projects or both. And so it's kind of like making the exams and projects make up that extra 14% of your grade above an 86%. Or it's that range between a 3.1 and a 4.0. And it's this part in terms of grade building and working it with a Canvas system is a little bit tricky just because a 4.0 has a large range rather than all of our other GPA points, which will be a specific percentage. But if you hit a 95% in the class, you have a 4.0. And so if you can complete 2 exams at a proficient level, it'll add 5%. So you'll go from like an 86% in the class to a 91%, and then to a 96%, which would be a 4.0 in the class. You also think about it as I was at a 3.1 and I added 0.45 GPA points for each proficient exam. Or it's 0.25 points for a complete exam. Projects then are less, they're essentially equivalent to the amount of work of a lab. So they're, if you complete a project, let's say you were at an 86% in the class and you completed 1 project, you got a proficient, you would then be at an 89% in the class and earning a 3.4 instead of a 3.1. And I know this is a little bit different than the way we think about percentages in grades, because these are going to be weighted percentages when I'm showing them on the right-hand column of this table. So like our exams and projects are like 14% of an overall grade, essentially, will be weighted to that. And what you accomplish within that depends whether or not you get that 14% into the total 100% in your grade calculation. So I realize that this is all a little confusing. However, there will be a tabulated Canvas grade, especially in the second half of the quarter. And we'll do a grade check-in at week 6. I'll ask for you to give me a goal so that way I can track if you're going to be able to meet it and if you're on track throughout the quarter. So here I have a couple examples of how to earn a 4.0. Basically, if a student completes all assignments except 1 in each category, they'll hit that 3.1 level. And then if they earn a proficient, they get above an 85% on both exams, then they have a 4.0 in the class. Another way that a student could earn it, and there's lots of ways to hit a 4.0, is maybe they are just really don't like exams, but they're really like all the other assignments. And so they focus on making sure that they complete all of the assignments at a proficient level, or at least, so they complete them all at a proficient level without relying on dropping without dropping an assignment in each category. And then instead of relying on exams to build up their grade, they rely on projects. And so one project is just completing all the core assignments. And so that automatically increases their grade by 0.3 GPA points. So now they were at a 3.1 and now they're at a 3.4. Then they do another project. They make study guides for each chapter, and that brings them up to a 3.7. Awesome. And then they take an exam, and let's say they get it complete. That's another 0.25 GPA points. So now they're at a 3.95, which rounds to a 4.0. In general, with these 0.05 increments within the GPA, I can't input GPAs at that level of detail. And so my policy is to always round up. So if you're ever like, I think I'm going to kind of fall in between two GPA scores, know that I'll give you the higher of the two. So there's a lot of ways to navigate this based on whether or not you are a confident test taker or you're an anxious test taker, or if you have to navigate an absence for a few weeks in the class. So I have another example here of how to earn like a 2.9. And this shows how this gets a little bit more complicated. Why it's great that Canvas can track things. Sometimes we'll have, like, for most cases, students will have some number of proficient and complete and incomplete assignments. And so here's an example of a student and like how things would work out for like kind of a random selection of which ones are complete, incomplete, and proficient that would lead up to a 2.9. And as I sat down and worked on this, the way that I figured out what that score would be for a student that had this set of assignments turned in is outlined here. So, which kind of gets to maybe the core of this idea, which is on day one, I'm going to assume we all have a 3.1 in the class. And that as you move forward and you earn proficient grades, you maintain that 3.1. And then when you reach exams or project points, you can increase that grade up above a 3.1. So if I was going to calculate a grade, what I really do is I just start with that 3.1 assumption and then subtract points for anything that isn't proficient. And so if something is complete, it'll have a different decrease in points than if it's incomplete. And I've listed them all here. So, and I'll just walk through one example. So for homework, if there were 2 completed homeworks that were proficient, then I would subtract 0.1 GPA points for each of them. So instead of a 3.1, I now have a 2.9. And if one was incomplete, then I would subtract the 0.2, but I would ignore that first incomplete one. So if it was just 1, I'd be like, all right, cool, so I'm still at a 2.9. And I would go through this for each of the different types of assignments. And then that would bring the grade down, and then I would add points up. So I would add a 0.25 for each complete exam, or a 0.5 if it was proficient, and then a 0.15 for each complete project, or 0.3 if it was proficient. So there's a way to easily calculate your grade, even though this looks very long, and I will create a little Excel sheet to input it if you are interested in like being able to do that in the early parts of the quarter, or if you want to just kind of play around with what are the pathways to your grade goals. All right, let me know if you have any questions about this. We'll review this in class as well, but not in the level of detail that we covered in the video. We'll focus instead on student questions and misunderstandings about how the grading is going to work.